CDU-CSU wins German elections as Merz calls for Europe's autonomy. Callas to visit US to meet Rubio, discuss peace efforts in Ukraine, and a cherry on top interview, Blitz interview with Nicola Stanzia. Germany's center-right, CDU-CSU, is set to return power, with the far-right Alternative for Germany, AfD, emerging as the second-largest party, according to preliminary results of February 23 parliamentary elections. The snap election was driven by concerns of immigration, economic issues, and Donald Trump's return to the United States presidency. Cheers erupted at CDU headquarters on the evening of February 23 as exit polls confirmed the opposition party's victory. Outside the building, a small group of demonstrators, though protested against CDU leader Friedrich Merz, his stance on immigration. Declaring victory, Merz addressed supporters in central Berlin saying, I quote, "Let's get the party started," end of quote, signaling his intent to begin coalition talks swiftly. With 28.5% of the vote, Merz is expected to become Germany's next chancellor. A staunch conservative who has never held government office, he will lead Europe's largest economy. The AfD secured 20.8%, an unprecedented result for the far-right party, which has long been considered extremist party. The elections spelled a historic defeat to the incumbent centre-left Social Democratic Party SPD, which came in third with only 16.4%. The environmentalist Greens and the Left Party also entered the Bundestag with 11.6 and 8.8 respectively. The centrist Free Democratic Party, FDP, and the Ukraine hater and pro-Russian pet, Zara Wagenknecht Alliance, BSW, failed to even cross the 5% threshold needed to win parliamentary representation, and that for sure is a good news for Germany and Ukraine.
I congratulate the CDU, CSU and Friedrich Merz on their victory in the Bundestag elections. A clear voice from the voters, and we see how important this is for Europe. We look forward to continuing our joint work with Germany to protect lives, bring real peace closer to Ukraine and strengthen Europe. Volodymyr Zelensky, President of Ukraine.
The German elections came amidst growing uncertainty about the obvious, the US commitment to Europe's and Ukraine's security. Friedrich Merz expressed doubts about NATO's future even following recent comments from the Trump administration.
I would never have thought that I would have to say something like this on a TV show, but after Donald Trump's remarks last week, it is clear that this government does not care much about the fate of Europe. This is the Russian narrative, this is how Putin has presented it for years, and I'm frankly shocked that Donald Trump has now apparently embraced it himself. Friedrich Merz, leader of the CDU-CSU.
Merz also questioned whether NATO would remain intact by the June summit and stressed the urgency of building an independent European defense strategy. Known for his hardline stance on Russia, Merz has supported sending medium-range Taurus missiles to Ukraine, a move the outgoing Chancellor Olaf Scholz, known for his cowardly and monster-appeasing stance, has firmly opposed. While achieving the strongest result, CDU-CSU does not have enough seats to secure a parliamentary majority on its own, and will need a coalition partner to build a government. Merz has already rejected the possibility of a coalition with AfD, leaving a grand alliance of CDU-CSU and SPD, or a three-way coalition with the Greens, the most likely outcome. Somewhat cautiously optimistic, I'd say. We'll keep you posted. The EU's top diplomat, Kaja Kallas, will visit the US on February 25th to meet Secretary of State Marco Rubio and discuss efforts to end the Russia-Ukraine war, Kallas told journalists on February 24th before a ministerial meeting in Brussels. Kallas' statement comes after American and Russian delegations meet in Saudi Arabia on February 18th for talks of ending the war in Ukraine. Neither Ukraine nor the European Union were invited to participate in these talks, and Kallas stressed that no agreement regarding Ukraine or Europe can work without parties involved. The EU's top diplomat said she plans to discuss these and other issues with Rubio and other officials in the United States, reacting to US President Donald Trump's denouncing Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky as a dictator. Callas noted that unlike Ukraine, Russia has not had fair elections in 25 years. Callas also suggested that the messages coming out of the US regarding the elections in Ukraine suggest that the Russian narrative is very strongly represented there. Kremlin propaganda has pushed the narrative that Zelensky is an illegitimate leader, relying on the premise that his first presidential term was originally meant to end on May 20th, 2024. Trump's claim ignores the fact that Ukraine's constitution prohibits elections during martial law, which has been in effect since Russia's full-scale invasion began in 2022. As a result, Zelensky's term has been extended, which constitutional lawyers argue is permitted under Ukrainian law. I mean, here is a great example of how power and money corrupt people. Remember Elon Musk? Yes, that Musk. When he only started his space career, a rising star of intellect, a visionary of sorts, and a dreamer who have made it happen and shifted a reality. SpaceX sent to space and returned successfully. Teslas are available all over the world, and this man builds with his own hands a way to the stars, literally making it possible for humanity to reach Mars during one lifetime span, and maybe even settle down there. I mean, a colony on Mars was that far away, remember? Now, these days, look at Elon Musk today. Another someone who just exchanged his dreams and technical breakthroughs for money and power and Russian oil. As sad as it gets. Nicolas Tenzier, a French civil servant, academic, writer, and editor, and a very fine gentleman, if you ask me, is with us tonight at the Age of English. Mr. Tenzier, hello.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for welcoming me again.
Yes, I mean, an exquisite pleasure. You're a great intellectual. This is why I'm just craving to know. I mean, transatlantic union, just educate me. I was in Munich. I was actually listening to J.D. Vance's speech. And I was, there were like, I don't know, 1,000 my colleagues, journalists from all over the world were sitting and typing and everything. They've seen probably everything in their lives, sitting like this, heads down. And while he starts speaking and they start to understand, to comprehend what he's telling us, what he's talking about, heads are starting to rise and eyes are starting to roll over. So is transatlantic union dead? NATO is no more as well. I mean, United Nations is almost no more. Am I right?
Well, unfortunately, yes, I would say, because I think that I'm not saying that forever. I mean, the
Mm,
transatlanticism is dead, but for the time being, and as long as Trump is in office,
right.
unfortunately, I think it is for many different kind of reasons. The first one is that the ideology of Trump resembles Putin's ideology, and I don't see any kind of difference, such as, for instance, the full contempt of the rule of law, the full contempt for the life of the
Mm,
people,
mm,
the
right.
full contempt for the freedom of the country, the neglect for the so-called small and middle-sized nations,
Right.
and the praise of the great powers, even dictatorships like Russia and maybe as well China.
Mhm.
So basically, I think that you were referring to G.D. Vance's speech. If we consider what Mr. Trump himself is talking about, for instance, well, Ukraine is responsible for well its own invasion,
Exactly.
or
Like,
let's say, I don't know. I mean, the fact that. There was absolutely no mentions of the war crimes, crimes against humanity, crime of genocide
mm, mm,
perpetrated by the Russians. It shows that he has, I mean, a post-truth conception of the world. Truth doesn't matter, the right of the people doesn't matter, the freedom doesn't matter, There is only relationships based on pure force and attacked on the freedom of the people. And that's not Western values. We can, of course, blame the US for many things that it does during its own history, or indeed in the
Mm,
past. We can blame the US for Vietnam. We can blame US also partly for the Second War, in Iraq. We can blame, of course, the US for many things. But if we consider still the conceptions that the US has,
right.
it was the beacon of freedom. And it was a kind of example. So I quite often criticizes the US for what it did or what it didn't,
Mm,
especially
right.
what it didn't, during Obama's term or also Biden's term. I
Exactly.
think he could
Right.
have supported, Ukraine much more. But no, we have in a kind of moment of reversal of alliances.
Mm.
And that's pretty new. And I must say, it was unexpected, even if we were no warned about Trump's danger.
Right. Yeah. I mean, absolutely. I mean, to be honest with you, I have a lot of colleagues in America, like professional, people working for Washington Post, people working for the New York Post, the New York Daily, Telegraph, Time Mag. They all say that America is now in the utter shock, and like no one expected, and the constituency of Donald Trump is, I mean, also shocked. So my question is, I mean, and I also see the millions of pro-Ukrainian voices, millions, like every comment has tens of thousands on not pro-Ukrainian sources like CNN. It never was very much pro-Ukrainian.
Yes.
But I mean, now I've seen millions of people because now Trump is their problem together with Ukraine. Like he stabbed Zelensky in the back. It never happened before. You can play political games, you can squeeze the mineral out of Ukraine, but you do it in a way that is insulting and scary to Americans. And Americans are starting to rise. Am I right? So, do you believe that Trump can make it to the end of the tenure, to the end of his term, presidential term?
Well, I would say that, of course, I see, the protest. I see, of course, the outrage, including among some Republicans. But the problem is that Trump and also Elon Musk and the cronies are destroying all the
Right.
counterweights. That's a problem. Just see, what happened, in the Senate. You had, the confirmation of the people who were supposed to be siding with Russia. Let's say Tulsi Gabbard, for instance. We remember her stances about Syria and Ukraine and Russia, in the past.
Right.
We had, of course, some people who were convicted for misconduct, personal misconduct.
Right.
We had some conspiracy terrorists also coming into office, including the vaccines. And everything was approved by the Senate during the confirmation hearings.
Mm,
That's the first thing. Then we have, of course, the Supreme Court, but of course, Supreme Court is not competent on everything. We had, of course, our very courageous judges trying, of course, to stand up to Trump. But unfortunately, you don't have many. And do you see any big demonstrations, in the street? We had some demonstration, in the
mm,
U.S.,
right.
but
Right. Right.
very few, very few. And the problem is, of course, you have the counterweights of the democratic states. The states which with governors are, from the Democratic Party, but you don't have so many, not have so many. And the
Okay.
problem is that he has the majority in the both in the House, both
Right.
the House of Representatives and the Senate. So unfortunately, he can go, to its term, and maybe some considers that he could do a third term, which will be, of course, a breach of the constitution.
But who cares? I mean,
Maybe, but it
he
could
can
happen.
just take a constitution. Putin did that already, so he's close friends. So you just take a constitution, stripes out, it just stripes out the "We the People" and puts "We the People" or Donald Trump, and that's it. It's going to work for them, maybe, but maybe not. maybe Americans will show him where is his place. Because I mean,
Let's hope
I'm
so.
saying again, it is, yes. Because I mean, people are shocked. Absolutely, he's destroying the checks. He's unchecking the checks and unbalancing the balances. The founding fathers of America didn't want the dictatorship. They afraid exactly that. And Trump being an embodiment of democracy, because only inside the democracy you can vote for someone like Trump. Trump is right now demolishing everything. So people are afraid, like, oh, they didn't know maybe that you, with a couple of executive orders, you just completely, I mean, grind all the political machinery in the United States. This is what is going on. But I mean, let's talk about France. France is also shocked, right? And
Absolutely.
Macron met exactly. So Emmanuel Macron met Trump to do what? Like to educate the Tsar, the American king, who is invaded and who is invader, who's the dictator. What? What for?
Well, first of all, I say that I mean I won't blame Macron for trying.
Yeah, no, no,
Probably,
absolutely, no,
of course, if I
right.
was the president, certainly I would have done exactly the same, trying to
Mm,
convince Trump. But the problem is that Trump is its own connective bubble in a way.
right.
And you see, the exchanges or the opinions expressed by both President Macron and Trump completely different. And we also perfectly
Mm,
know that Trump could say something one day, another thing the other day, and some things also completely different, 1 week
absolutely.
after. And the problem is also that Trump said some things that was a kind of fantasy. I was yesterday night in a TV show, commenting. I mean, what Trump and Macron said during the meeting. And
Mm,
Trump said, for instance, I received some insurances by Putin that he could accept boots on the ground, in
right,
Ukraine. And
right.
just, 1 day after, the Kremlin, as he did before, denied and said, no, no, we cannot accept that. So, I mean, it was something probably, it was not a lie, maybe by Trump, but it was something like, let's say, a kind of fantasy. It's something
It
that he
is a
invented.
fantasy.
And
It is a
he
fan.
persuaded
Uh,
himself that Putin said that,
right.
and in fact, he didn't.
I
You
mean,
see,
this is the yeah, right. Pardon me. I mean, the thing is that I also can see that because I just need to read some pro-Kremlin stuff and propaganda and everything, and they are very careful in saying that Trump is their ally. Actually, I mean, in terms of actions, because they just can't trust him. This is a very check and mate situation, very strange situation where he says Putin holds the cards. Let's do business, not war, whatever. Forget about Ukraine. But the Putin understands that all the big business needs time and money, like billions of dollars, not rubles, of course, coming from America to Russia, and it takes years, 3, 4, 5, 10 years. And if Trump goes, the next president, here we go. So nobody knows what to expect. And I'm absolutely sure that Trump has no plan whatsoever. Am I right?
absolutely. Absolutely. I think that Trump has absolutely no plan. He just wants to do business with Russia, and that will be
Mm,
certainly very dangerous. I mean, for Europe and for the future of Ukraine. Because just imagine, and it was, mentioned, after the talk in Riyadh between Secretary
right.
Marco
Mm,
Rubio and Lavrov, that there could be new business links and new engagements, in the of the US, in Russia, new
mm,
investments, and it means that we could have a kind of lifting of sanctions. And you know that the state of the Russian economy, which is, I mean, certainly not quite well, with in big
looking at the rubble, yes.
inflation, when interest rates are very high, with the ruble, you're just plummeting, dramatically.
Under
And
the
the
ruble.
problem is that that Trump could save Putin from a kind of bankruptcy.
Yeah.
And then it means that then it will be very easier. It will be easier for Russia to rearm, and then 2, 3, or 4 years after, it will give, I mean, the power to the Kremlin, to attack Ukraine again, and also to attack some of the EU country, because the trustworthiness and the credibility of the security guarantees, or so-called security guarantees, and of
Mm.
the deterrence
Gone.
itself will be certainly completely damaged, or
Mm.
becoming null and void. And in fact, something that what I fear. It means that the only force of resistance, basically, right now, is in Europe. And by Europe, I mean not only the EU, but of course, I can associate, of course, the UK and Norway, and maybe some other country, like, let's say, Canada,
Yeah,
of course, maybe
absolutely. I mean,
Australia, Japan, and some like-minded countries that understand perfectly that if Trump basically push Ukraine, under the bus, then the next on the list will be not only Europe, but certainly Taiwan, because that will be also a signal that
mm,
there will be no more
that's right.
security
Right.
guarantee in Asia as well.
Mm. And that leads us to another question and last question for tonight. In terms of Europe, I know, I talk to people, I know many in the military, and the power is huge. It is huge. The military power, the economical, the political power. We in Europe lack only will to do it. So if we find the will, say we find the will, and we really want our security to be on a different level, to detached from United States, and to be absolutely firm, and to do what actually defense does, to defend us from the dictator. What do we do first thing? What do you think? What do you suggest we're doing? Like you're in charge, you have all the money and all the power. What do you do with the security in Europe now?
First of all, I will turn our economies into war economies. That's the first thing to do. And war economy is, as you know, in Ukraine, is not just creating and manufacturing some more weapons. Is basically turning all the economy, as the US did, in 1941,
Right.
into an economy devoted to war. It means that you have civil industries, and you have some laws in France and in many European countries that could allow the state to decide by executive orders to transform those civil economies into war
Right.
industries. And I
Put
think
it in
that
the
the
war
first thing
ways,
to
right.
do, if we consider that the threat is really serious, and I do, we have to
Makes two of
take
us.
exceptional measures. Then we have, of course, to create all the resources needed in order to boost our weapons industries. We are spending in France 2.1% of our GDP for defense. It must
Mm.
be 4 or 5. Same for the UK, same for Italy, same for Germany, same for Spain.
Right.
And I think we have to do so. We have many opportunities. Of course, we have to make choices in terms of budget allocations, of course. We have certainly to issue Euro bonds. We have, as Macron suggested, probably to take part of, the deposits that the people have in the bank, to transform them into loans in order to boost our defense industry. And I am sure that will have, at the end of the day, also very positive effects on
The
our
economy.
industrial capacities
Yes.
in terms of innovation.
Absolutely.
Just see what happened with the DARPA, in the 60s, in the US, which was a
Right.
huge agency devoted to the funding of research in military things. And it had a spiraling out effect, a very positive one, in the civil industry. Basically, the internet as we know it, which was basically an
Just
invention
by the way.
of the US,
Right.
was due to all the investments that they made, I mean, the US, in defense industry.
Mm.
So we have to explain that to the people, but we have to talk to the people, I mean, to the public opinion, in Europe, to make them aware of the threats posed by Russia.
Right.
Because many of the Western leaders, Western European leaders, not in the Eastern and Central Europe, but in the Western Europe, many often said, "Well, we are not in war with Russia,"
Exactly. Not yet.
and that's a problem. We are at war with Russia in a way because Russia has declared us the war. I understand that
Absolutely.
the most of the leaders cannot say we are at war with Russia officially, but we cannot say that we are not at war with Russia. We have to make the people understand why we have to protect Ukraine, to defend Ukraine, uh, whatever victory takes.
Whatever
Not as
victory
long as it
takes.
takes, but whatever victory takes. And I think that's a narrative of Ukraine's victory. That's some things that I wrote in my last piece that we have certainly to make people understand. And I am not comfortable with the very idea of peace talks, negotiations. And I would
Right.
suggest, and I often suggest it, in fact, the Western leader to refrain using those words because they are very misleading.
Right.
And last but not least, I think we cannot accept that Russia keeps in grips on some part of Ukrainian territories, because we know that the occupied territories, we are witnessing day after day deportation of children, collective rapes, tortures, summary executions. And we cannot give Putin a license to kill. And we have to express that. And I think the Western leaders, because if they are really and sincerely standing for the values of Europe and the very principles of Europe, they have to say we cannot accept that.
Great. And nicely put words, whatever takes, takes to the victory, whatever the victory takes. Thank you so very much, Mr. Tendia. I mean, when we say we, the collective Europe, you're bringing me back. I believe that maybe we are a collective Europe. Maybe we really share these values. And if we have people like you advocating for us, maybe we have hope. So thank you so very much. Nicolas
My pleasure,
Tendia is a
really.
yes, French civil servant, great academic writer, and as I told you, a great gentleman and personality was with us at Creative English. Stay tuned for more. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Lovely conversation. Thank you so very much. I just need to go. I would love to do it again.
No, please, please,
Uh,
please. I have also,
all
I
right.
am a little bit busy those days.
All right. Thank
Also,
you.
see you then.
Bye. Well, that was it for tonight with me, Henry Kim, and my team at UATV English and English-speaking Ukrainian state media in a constant persuasion to deliver hard truth in easy terms for the whole free world directly from Ukraine. Please, please do not shy out to like, share, and comment. We need you, and we need your voice, as your voice matters, as it helps our Ukrainian voice to be heard globally. So stay safe, and we definitely see you tomorrow.